Guys, so today we've got my second 2022 NHL mock draft. This is my first mock draft since we had the 2021 draft, so the 2022 draft is now the draft closest to us. And today I've got my top 25 rankings. So this is the draft rankings. Don't pay attention too much to the teams. It's mostly just based on how I think the teams will do, but it is a rankings. The teams don't really matter. I wasn't really paying attention to team needs. It is solely based on how good I think the players are as individuals, not based on these teams, as the actual draft order will probably be a lot different than this. But let's get started here. So the seasons for a lot of leagues in Europe already started, as well as the USHL, so really only the CHL is the only big league to not have started yet, but we have a lot of the European league starting, but it's a small sample size, but that affected this ranking a little bit, but this is a lot different than my last one. So starting off here at number 1, no surprise, we've got best prospect since Connor McDavid and Shane Wright. Shane Wright is an elite center playing with the Kingston Frontenacs. He actually beat out McDavid's record for most points by a 15-year-old exceptional status rookie in the OHL last season, putting up 66 points in 58 games. So we'll see what he does this year in his draft year, but he is the consensus number 1 overall pick, and I don't see any way he doesn't go. He's such a good player. He is very complete. I think is a big part of his game. He's a great 200-foot player, so a bit less like McDavid and kind of more similar to Crosby. I don't think he is as good as Crosby, but I think that he is maybe Crosby one notch down. I think he has Hall of Fame potential, and he is still a crazy good offensive player who will put up 100-plus points, as well as be very good defensively. So I think he is the player who has potential to be a top 5, if not top 3 player in the NHL. Moving on to number 2, we've got Lambert. So Lambert is a very good player, and 2 and 3 are actually very close. So I actually like to mention, since this mock draft, we're still almost like just a little less than a year away from the draft. It is still very early, and it's better to think of this in tier. So Shane Wright at 1 is first tier, then Lambert at 2, and my number 3 are the second tier. Tier 3 is, I would say, 4 to 8. Although 9 to 12 is tier 3, they're very close, and honestly I think you could even say 4 to 12 is a tier, and then I would say about 13 to 18 is tier 5, and then you have the rest, but this is significantly better than 2022. I would say pretty much any player I have in the top 12, or I think at least top 5 for sure, would go number 1 overall, even top 8 last year, and I mean up to number 12. As this is, I would say, the best draft since 2015. It's an elite draft with some amazing players at the top and great depth. Lambert is playing in the Liga. He has 1 assist in 5 games currently with JYP, so a bit of a slow start, but he did have 15 points in 46 games last year, so that very good numbers. I think he will improve in his draft year, and I think he has the potential to be a franchise number 1 center and the best second overall pick since Jack Eichel. Up here on number 3, we've got Matthew Savoy. So Matthew Savoy is a consensus top 3 pick. He is part of the Winnipeg Ice of the WHL, although he is playing in the USHL. And I mean, they do have the rights to him, but I think he's going to play in the USHL, and he's likely going to go play in college. But he put up 38 points in 34 games in the USHL, as well as 6 points in 4 games in the AJHL. So very good numbers. Although they aren't as good as expected, I think he is still a guy who has potential to be elite, even a franchise number 1 center. So before, we've got the Nashville Predators, and they're taking the top defenseman in Simone Nemec. I think he's an elite defenseman, and I would say he's the best defenseman in the draft since Rasmus Dahlin. And I would say he's kind of a similar player to Jamie Drysdale, an offensive defenseman, but I would say that his offense is slightly better than Drysdale, and he also has slightly better defense. His defense does need a little bit of work, but it's not terrible, and I think that he has potential to be a franchise number 1 defenseman, and I think he has top 4 in lock. He's easily a top 5 pick, and I think by the time of the draft, he will be top 5, and I think the gap between 4 here and the rest is quite big. Nemec is easily number 4, putting up amazing numbers in the Czech League as a defenseman. Now, moving on to number 5, we've got the San Jose Sharks, and I have them taking the biggest riser and the guy who I thought was the most underrated player. He has finally risen up the rankings, and Logan Cooley. Logan Cooley took the number 1 center job away from Rutger McGroarty, who was pretty much a consensus number 4 pick a while back, and McGroarty has dropped quite a bit, but Cooley has risen up, taking that starting center spot, putting up over a point per game with the USDP. And Cooley overall, amazing offensive player, but great two-way and from the faceoff circle as well. So he has an offensive skill to be a point per game plus player in the NHL, as well be a great two-way and great faceoff shot. At 6, we've got Juraj Slafkovsky. He's another player actually from the World Juniors for Slovakia, so really good player, and I think is the best player who is a winger. I think Lambert could be a winger, but right now Slafkovsky is the top winger as of what we know right now, and he put up great numbers last year. So this year he has 3 points in 2 games in the U20 league for Finland, and 1 assist in 4 games in the Liga. And last year he put up 13 points in 16 games in the U20 league. So great numbers. I think he's easily too good for U20, and he will play well in the Liga this year. 7, we've got the Red Wings, and they're taking Ivan Gershchenko, the top Russian here, and he is an amazing player, very complete, and a very, very gifted offensive player. He's got all the tools, an amazing shot. He's got the size, so he can be a power forward with an amazing shot. So he has the tools. I just think he needs to put it all together this year in the KHL to be in the top 5. So he's been playing in the KHL to start the year this year, and he has put up 3 points in 6 games. But I think he will need to get the promotion in the KHL if he actually even wants to be a top 10 pick, a top 5 pick for sure. Although I do think he has a top 5 potential. Next up at 8. We've got Joakim Kemell. In my opinion, he is one of the most underrated players in this class. He put up very good numbers last year in the U20 league, actually just as good as Brad Lambert. Although he hasn't really played much in the Liga, he has put up 5 points in 5 games this year, so point per game. Amazing start to the season. And honestly, I think he's a dark horse to be a top 5 pick in this draft. He is an amazing player, and he is a right wing. He plays for JYP with Brad Lambert, so when you put him with point per game, 3 goals and 2 assists, amazing way to start the year. And if he continue this, I think that he will rise up to the top 5, and I think is truly an elite winger. At number 9, we've got the LA Kings, and I have them. They've got Isaac Howard, so the team doesn't really matter here, but Isaac Howard's a very interesting prospect. For me, before I had them a lot higher, he's dropped a little bit for me. But overall, I think he's a very wide range. I think he can still go top 5, but he also could drop out of the top 15, as he hasn't been too great to start the year, although he's been fine. So 3 goals in 2 games in the USDP, so not amazing this year, but also not terrible. He played pretty well, and he's a great winger. He's a left winger, American left winger here. Very good offensive player, but I think he has that first sign potential. We'll see if he can get there though, and it will be very telling how he does this season. At 10, we've got David Jiricek. So this year he played in the Czech league, and he has risen up a ton in many rankings. This year he has 1 goal in 4 games in the Czech, playing with HC Plzeň. I can't pronounce it, but he's a defenseman. He put up crazy good numbers last year as a defenseman, and it was a small sample size, as he did only play 34 games, but he did have 9 points playing in the top Czech league. Before that though, he wasn't as well known, he wasn't as good, but I think in those 34 games, he was really good playing as a defenseman, putting up great points. He's a great skater, and also isn't bad defensively as well. So this is why I have him in the top 10. At 11, we've got the Coyotes, and at 11, I have Connor Geekie. So Connor Geekie has also risen a ton. He is actually only the second pure player in the CHL here. Shane Wright, Savoy has the rights, but he doesn't actually play here. There's a ton of international players in this draft, but Connor Geekie is the third Canadian here, and he is an amazing player who has risen up a ton. So he put up 23 points in 24 games with the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL. If Savoy played there, that would be stacked with Kiki, Savoy. I don't think Krebs is going to play there, but they did have Krebs. They also have Carson Lambert. And putting up a point per game is really, really good for Connor Kiki. So I think if he can continue on this track next year, I think he has really good top 6, if not first line potential. Here at 12, we've got Frank Mazur. He's fell a little bit for me. I honestly think that he has top 10, if not top 5 potential. Still in the draft, although I see him more as a lower top 10, but definitely a top 15 player here. And honestly, I think this is a bit low for him. But I think that with the rise of Kamal and Juracek, I had to put them ahead of Mazur, who I originally had in my top 10. But he's still putting up great numbers last year. He's got 5 points in 2 games in the USDP, so better than Howard. And I think it was close between him and Howard. Like 9 to 12 is very, very close. At 13, we've got Danila Yurov. So he's got 0 points in 8 games, but he is playing in the KHL. He put up really good numbers the year before. He's an interesting prospect for me. He has potential. I'm not sure, though, if he will really become an elite player. I've seen some people have him in their top 5. I think he's a top 15 prospect without a doubt. I'm not so sure about really him being a top 10, though. He's been slow in the KHL, but not terrible. So, I mean, points aren't really, he's not going to put up a ton of points, but I don't think he's a top 10 prospect. Here at 14, we've got Elias Thompson. So I had him at 8 before. He's dropped 6 spots quite a bit. He is still a solid prospect. He has been crazy good to start the year, and I think he's really looking more like a future number 2 defenseman, or number 3, like number 2 and number 3 rather than a number 1. He's got 2 points in 6 games, but he is playing in the J20 League. He's not playing in the SHL this year, which is a little of a concern. But overall, he's a great 2-way defenseman, and I still believe he has the number 1 potential. At 15, we've got Seamus Casey. He is quite the interesting prospect here, put up really good numbers in the USDP, and he has a point in 2 games so far as a defenseman. So he is a really, really good player, but I think I'm a little bit concerned. He's been inconsistent, and his rankings are kind of in the 10 to 15 range overall. So I think this is probably a good spot to put him. Moving on here to number 16, we've got Tristan Flannel, the number 1 overall pick in the QMJHL draft a couple years back, and he put up 18 points in 31 games from Gatineau Olympique in the QMJHL. So really good numbers as a defenseman, and his rankings are quite all over the board, but I think still he's a really good mid-first round talent, and I could even see him going into the top 15, and he was number 1 pick, so I think he has first round potential and could be a top 10 pick. Next up here at 17, we've got Datton Madison. So Maddox is another guy who has risen quite a bit for me, and he played with the Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL, so a little bit of a smaller sample size, but he's very aggressive and up in the play as a defenseman, and he put up 9 points in 16 games with the Moose Jaw in the WHL. So again, small sample size, but great numbers as a defenseman there in the WHL. Next week here at 18, we've got Rutger Haughey. So I think this may be a little unpopular with most known players in this draft. He was formerly a consensus top 5 pick. A lot of people had him at number 4 behind Lambert and Savoy. He put up 5 points in 2 games this year, so really good. But I think a main concern is his play last year. 19 points in 30 games in the USDP. Losing his number 1 center job to Logan Cooley wasn't too great for that. And he has that offensive skill. I think the talent is there. And he has a great start this year. So I think he could be a top 10 pick for sure. But for now, overall, it's playing with his strength in this draft. I think 18 is a bit better for him. And I think he would go top 10 in the 2021 draft for sure. But I think he needs to prove that he can put up really good points, and skill is there. He can be consistent, and if he continues how he does with these 5 points in 2 games, only 2 games, still really good. I think he'll easily reach the top 15, even top 10. At 19 here, we've got Nathan Gauthier. So now we're in kind of the next tier of players, and there is a little bit of a drop-off between McGroarty and Gauthier, but Gauthier played with the Quebec Remparts in the QMJHL, but really good numbers, great offensive player there. At 20, we've got Ryan Chesley. So Chesley plays in the USDP, another defenseman, and there are quite a few really good defensemen who put up really solid numbers here. Chesley is a number one, and he did put up really nice point totals. Moving on to 21, we've got Cutter Gauthier. This past year, he put up 21 points in 32 games playing with the USDP, so really solid numbers. And here the guys are really close together, pretty interchangeable. But I do have Gauthier here, and he has been pretty solid to start this season, as he has 3 points in 2 games, so just over 1 per game. Next up at 22, we've got Ty Nelson. He was the first overall pick in the OHL draft, and I think he's definitely the hardest guy in this draft to judge, as we haven't seen him play in a year. The OHL didn't play last year, and he didn't play anywhere else, so we didn't see him last year, but he was the number 1 overall pick in the OHL draft, and he played really good playing in GTHL, so he's a really talented defenseman, great offensive defenseman, so it'll be really interesting to see how he does this year. So that's why I think a lot of people have him outside the first round, because we didn't get to see him play last year, but if he can play well this year, I think he will definitely be deserving of this pick, and I think we could see him fall into the top 50. Next up at 23, we've got Jack Hughes. So this is not Jack Hughes' first overall pick, clearly unrelated. It's Jack D. Hughes, another Jack Hughes, and he's a solid player. He's a center who, like Jack Hughes, played in the NCAA, and last year he put up 8 points in 14 games, so a bit of a small sample size, and he's going to be playing with Northeastern this year in the NCAA. At 24, we've got Maddox Fleming, and he has dropped quite a bit. He was once a guy who's projected as a top 10 pick, didn't do as well last year, putting up pretty underwhelming points as to what he was expected, but I mean still put up solid point totals in the USDP. Next up here at 25, to round out this draft rankings, we've got Jonathan Karamaki. So he is a huge riser, and his name you probably haven't heard of. He's not on a lot of mock drafts at all, but I decided to throw him on here with his fantastic start to his season in the Swedish J20 League. He's put up 12 points in 5 games, including 8 goals, playing with Djurgården IF's J20 League. So I think he's soon going to get called up in the SHL, and I think he'll be this year's Eklund, who's relatively unknown the year before, and then comes in to be a top 10, top 5 pick. So I think that he could find his way into the top 15, top 10 if he plays well in the SHL, but he's an unheard of prospect here. But I think I had to put him in this draft ranking, and I think in a future draft rankings he could find himself being ranked higher. So that is my mock draft, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below what are your thoughts. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.